Streaming live from the far side of Enceladus, I am Faolan, and joining me are hosts Attica, Castor, and Gakell today as we tackle alienation and the root causes of fascism in society, along with a whole host of other issues this week. And I figured that we would actually discuss this today because last week we discussed alt-furry and how it seemingly for a while there exploded, and then we crushed it. So
we smashed the fash.
Exactly.
We smashed the fash.
Taking out the trash.
However, with the ongoing threat of fascism in society, I do think that it is important that we address the root causes of fascism. And one of the big things that we had kind of trended through all of this up until today, so we discussed it on the first episode a little bit and the one before, is how alienation is creating fascism in our society today.
I'm also like forever cautious of the idea of saying we've defeated alt-furry, because fascism just reinvents itself over and over again, and I really don't want to be like, there will be peace in our time. Like, I'm really nervous about saying this is it, we've defeated alt-furry, the danger is over.
I mean, as long as these people do exist, they could definitely regroup. So always be vigilant for them trying to rebrand their little cults online.
Yeah, and their branding is obvious, but like, again, we can't forever and always continually be babysitting these people. It's like we have to tell the rest of the furry fandom what these people are, what it is they want to do, what it is they have done, and how to recognize them.
Definitely, that's what we should be doing. We should be making it as clear as possible that these people, they aren't just arguing a different opinion. They're actually advocating for things that, if were actually enacted, would be catastrophic for society.
But that's not even like, so we can go say they want genocide, like that still could get eye rolls from people who like, oh, it'll never happen, regardless of the reality of Trump being president and that weirdo from Alabama winning his primary race. But like, so, and we don't even have to go that far though, because people have actually committed crimes, right? Like they cost Caliph for $26,000. They've doxed anyone who disagrees with them. We've got like several instances of them being really, really pedo with 15-year-olds, right? Like, we don't even have to do they're really Nazis and they want genocide. All we have to do is show people that they're like pedo criminals who attack conventions, and people will go, oh yeah, this is some real shit. I don't want this around.
Definitely. I mean, like that's another thing. We don't even have to actually talk about like what their actual plans for society are. Just show that they're cretins. They're proud of it too. So why not show what the baby fucking did in the diaper?
But one of the most important, things that we do need to kind of pay attention to is like what is causing this, because it isn't just alt-furry that this is erupting in. This is something that they're trying to do with multiple fandoms. They've already done it with bronies. They've done it with anime, yeah. Definitely video games, and we saw this week that they had a fit about Star Trek, so I think that they're going to try for Star Trek next. It will not surprise me, and that'll just be the ultimate perversion if they do. But we have to look at what's causing this, and fascism, modern fascism as we see it today, and really all come from a crisis within capitalism, and that crisis erupts generally through alienation. Basically, the working class is alienated from the fruits of their labor, but also from their culture and stuff like this. And right now, that's even more so because what we're seeing here when we look at over the Discord logs of All Furry and we look at the conversations and the kinds of people that are, most heavy into this rhetoric, what do we generally see? We see unemployment. We see people that are in mostly kind of like lower positions here that are basically just arguing on the behalf of Porky here.
Like if they suck up well enough, someone will finally give them that job and that objectified girlfriend that they are told they want so much.
Right, and the thing is right now, these people, because unemployment is vast in our society right now. It's a bigger problem than what we're being led on to believe. Right now, we have a larger disengagement from the workforce of working age people than ever in the history of the United States when it comes to per capita. Right now, I believe it was like something under like 60% of the actual working age workforce is actually employed. And that's the lowest it's ever been. And it keeps diminishing. And it's not that people don't want jobs or whatever. It's just these people have stopped looking for jobs. They've given up because they just can't find them anymore.
And everything, all of your identity is tied to your job. All of your ability to be a basic human being is tied to your job. Your waifu is tied to your job.
Your actual wife is tied to your job.
Leftists solve this problem by not giving a shit about traditional gender roles. That's why, I think, that might be a reason why you had a simultaneous exploration of alternative gender identities and this massive unemployment. Because, I'm unemployed. My identity is no longer tied to a job. If you're of the right mindset, you don't need someone to tell you what to do. You don't need to be made to goose step around. You can kind of figure stuff out for yourself, finally.
The people that are lucky enough to have jobs and stuff like that, so many of those jobs are just underpaid right now. They're not getting the value that they're putting into the work. I mean, right now, things cost like, I believe it was like 3 times more, something like that I saw, like, than they did in the 60s, like for purchasing power. And we're getting paid like half of what we earned in the 60s or something like that when you start comparing inflation. So right now we have this huge crisis where just people aren't really making enough to survive. And this is especially true with millennials, where we kind of see this like insurgence of both socialism and like a lot of people going into fascist beliefs. Is that a lot of this is coming up with the younger generation.
Right. I mean, like millennials earn, what is it, 20% less than baby boomers did when they were the same age as them. One thing that I do see is people aren't making the money that they feel they should be, so they feel disadvantaged. So what they're doing is basically finding someone to blame. But instead of blaming the people who are hurting them, like the politicians and the capitalists, they're going to point to the migrant who somehow managed to get a job. Now, mind you, a low paying job that a person who is middle class wouldn't want in the first place. But they still want to point and blame they still want to point and blame someone. So they're going to do the migrant.
Well, it's because they fetishize the work, but they don't want to actually do the work.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of it too. So they're going to
like city people with like raised farming trucks and that cowboy identity, but they've never even fucking seen a cow.
Oh, me and Gakell were talking about that the other day.
Don't get me fucking started with that shit.
Gakell, come on, let's hear some country Canadian rage.
Look, like, these people have their trucks that are probably paid by their parents. Probably made their money from oil. Then, like, literally, there's someone from my hometown. His parents were fucking rich, and he literally trashed a truck every year, and they just kept buying him a new one. It was always a nice lifted truck, and they like out in the country, either you have rich kids with those kind of trucks and they just trash them, or if people in the city who have them who've never even really even leave the city, but they feel they have to try and have some kind of advantage so they can get to Starbucks first. It's fucking stupid.
Yeah, no, I know. And I see it every day. I'm personally a big believer that if you're going to own a truck, it shouldn't be clean.
You've probably never even seen an actual farm truck.
I saw one of these people around town in Phoenix. Raised truck, raised like to the height of, the top of other cars. Big fucking American flag. Big fucking thin blue line police flag flying off the back of it. Clean as a whistle. Gets out of the car, walks into the whitest fucking Japanese restaurant I've ever seen. Like, that's who these people are.
Attica, that's everyone in like southern Louisiana.
They literally hide behind, this America and this thin blue line. Like, these people aren't even cops. They just like wave this cop flag for like I don't know. Fuck you. Poor
It's the whole
people
mentality of trying to. It's the whole mentality of trying to say I'm the best. Look at me, I'm the best.
Well, it's jingoism and nationalism, because the big problem that we're facing here with this whole thing, because basically what's going on here is, of course, you have the whole unemployment factor. Then you have all the people that do have jobs. Like, so many of them just have bullshit jobs. They're jobs that are created that we could replace. But I'm not saying that these people aren't unimportant. They should get paid what values they're reaping in and stuff like that. That's no doubt there, and they deserve a living wage just like anybody else does. But a lot of these jobs, they are bullshit jobs. They waste people's time. And then, of course, there's jobs out there that, of course, because, we do have people working at things that people don't, like the labor's poorly managed. So where we do need workers, we don't necessarily have them. And where we don't need workers, we seem to have a lot of them. But the problem with that is that you get a bunch of people who now have these bullshit jobs. They know it's bullshit. And so now they feel that they do have like a lack of purpose here. And so what happens is unemployment plus tons of bullshit jobs out there. It's like, well, what is the point if I do get a job and everything? I'm just gonna have to deal with this bullshit all day, and I'm not gonna get anything out of it. What's the point? What's the point in life? And because people identify so heavily with their work, this creates basically the bedrock for cultural nihilism right there. And once you go down the path of nihilism, I think that's actually where the crisis starts to accelerate. Because one of the things that you notice with fascism is so much of it is predicated off of nihilism.
Explain nihilism.
So nihilism is basically this idea that nothing matters. It's like peak absurdism in a way.
Now, is this like high school teenager, nothing matters? Or is this like, does this have more like philosophical Nietzsche's weight behind it?
A little bit of both, actually. It's more like midlife crisis nihilism, where people like back in like the heyday of America, you used to hit your 40s and they'd be like, oh, your midlife crisis, you're gonna go out and do all this stuff because it doesn't matter, but you still want to experience it. Except now, well, people don't have good jobs and stuff like that, so now they're having this existential crisis like much earlier in their life, and there's no outlet for it. So they can't go out there and they like buy some like rad car or something like that because they don't have the money to do that. So they realize this, and they kind of realize like, well, even if I did, what's the point? And that's when you have a bunch of people in that mood. Suddenly, you just have the the conditions necessary for a rapid philosophical and cultural change, and people will seek out meaning somewhere. And that's what fascism has to offer them, because what they're looking for is meaning in things. And if they're told, well, you know, it means something to be part of your nation, or it means something to be white, then there are people out there that are that desperate, they will latch onto it. And if you really think about it, that's what cults do to people.
Right. Now, why is it always whiteness? Like, why is it so everyone's suffering under the same economic system, all races? Why is it always a white identity that gets picked? Why do you never see a resurgence of like Mexican identity as a fallback? Because those, you know, if you're not white, you have a harder time getting a job. If you're not white, you have a worse life. You're even more socially alienated.
I think the issue with that is people always have this idea of, okay, we need to restore society because that's what's wrong with it. Like, we need to go back. We made a mistake somewhere. So like what a lot of identitarian groups do is they'll be like, okay, minorities are the issue. So we, as the I guess like the natural inheritors of American culture, we need to reclaim our society. That's the way like it's typically phrased. So I think that's why it's always it's always put out as being like white identitarian movements. It's usually like
it's almost like a religious kind of thing as well in some ways, in that it's kind of like this idea of seeking a golden age.
Yeah,
and you seek this kind of thing like within society. Yeah, like this forgotten time. And this is attractive to many people. Like for instance, like the whole Atlantis story. That's very attractive, and a lot of people like are really heavily into that. And there's really kind of a lot of cool stuff on that topic. But you know, when you start piecing it apart, you realize like a lot of this stuff starts falling apart very fast. And so it's the same kind of thing with this whole like racial identity thing, is that they've created this like mythology of some golden American era that's like kind of non-specific-ish, but probably like in the 40s or 50s kind of thing, where, you know, like
whenever Jim Crow existed, that's when America was great. That's kind of like the idea that they have. But you continue, I'm sorry.
But the other factor in this is that what's going on here is, on top of all of this, the culture around capitalism that breeds up basically makes people feel like literal aliens. They're strangers in a strange land because they don't have anything really to hold on to. Because what's going on here with fascism promises them something that's rooted in this like idea of this tradition that goes way back. And so you have this like golden era up until now, and there's this big long line of things, and that makes people feel great. And so what doesn't make people feel great is this idea that's constantly shifting, everything's a fad kind of thing, and then everything that is long lasting in a tradition is just warped and turned into something else. And it's even done with like the very like core things that they believe in, like Christianity and whatnot. Like you even see that like it's warped into this like prosperity gospel, basically, where it's turned into something that it's not supposed to be, and it never was supposed to be. And so like as Attica said in a few episodes back, I believe, and he said it all fair, definitely, it's basically turning everything into tiki culture, or as I took his words and I called it Tikification. And that's what's going on, is everything here is becoming a tiki culture.
Yeah, like basically the analogy that I gave was that, you know, back at the very beginnings of capitalism, birthed out of mercantilism, birthed out of ships sent from England to go, you know, see what the heck they could steal. the most upfront obvious thing that capitalism did was sail up to an island in, the Pacific, find some local people, see the stuff they had, kill all the local people, take their culture, destroy it, then recreate the culture, and then sell it in a gift shop. So, you go to Hawaii, and what's there is a bunch of, commodified Hawaiian culture. The Hawaiian flowers, the tikis, the grass skirts, but yet all of the actual tikis and grass skirts are like destroyed 100 years ago. And capitalism does this over and over and over again. An indigenous people, or an organic movement, or an original fandom will create something. Capitalism will see value in it, move in, kill off the movement, kill off the people, kill off the fandom, take it, destroy it, recreate it, and then resell it. So they control it, and they're making money off of it, and they're making a fake market for it. And then they're selling that tiki cup in a Hawaiian gift shop to white tourists. The native people see nothing of it, and the capitalists in California get all the money. And that can be traced back from Cook landing on the Hawaiian Islands right to bronies. When bronies started to make their own cartoons, their own characters of ponies. Boom, DCMA, 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 take down, take down, take down. Can't have that. And then what happened? What's the name of the Derpy Hooves? Then Derpy Hooves ends up in a damn episode. It's the same damn thing. So all of organic original culture, everything that anyone creates of their own, is taken from them, destroyed, and then sold to other people, and they see no benefit.
Right. And you know what also just perfectly fits that is rock and roll.
Oh yeah, like how it originally started like in kind of like the slums with African Americans, and with Elvis Presley, he made it mainstream for like white Americans to enjoy the blues and kind of like with rock.
Right, but the other thing is it kept happening with rock and roll. For instance, like so much of rock is just devoid of meaning. It's just background music to whatever party freaking baby boomers, want to have. They don't listen to the lyrics. They don't understand, like, so much of this was supposed to be like the music of the revolution, dude. And, like Creedence Clearwater and bands like that. And you listen to their lyrics and they're just like the most woke as fuck thing ever. And then you speak to the people that supposedly love this music, and they just don't get it. To them, it's just a product to be consumed without thinking of what it is. And then eventually, over the course, like, we hear what rock music is today, where it totally just became sanitized and devoid. You will not hear things like Creedence Clearwater on the radio today, or Led Zeppelin, or anything like that. So, like, it had two different phases of corporatization to it.
Yeah, that's definitely the case with culture. I don't know if you guys ever heard the term of plastic Indians. Has anyone heard of that? Where basically you have people who claim to be shamans. They claim to have studied with like indigenous masters, and they'll sell basically crystals off the off the street. And while actual like native culture is being eroded away because it's not something that you can make profit off of, these people make millions. So it's just something that I guess is innate to capitalism. Like it is, if something's real and true and genuine, it's not going to resonate with people who think materialism is better than like you could say like spiritual awakening, like true spiritual awakening, where it takes effort to do something. So yeah, like just the culture that comes out of Silicon Valley is very toxic for human beings in general.
Well, just capitalism in general.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
it strips everything of its cultural identity for profit. And then what cultural identity is there isn't going to be there long because something else is going to have to come to replace it because simply people must continually consume. And so unless that thing is something that can continually be consumed over and over again with increasing profit margins, it has to be replaced with something that does.
And, you know, I this is why I'm waiting for the capitalist world to get so desperate. Because the capitalist world knows we're out there as furries. The capitalist world knows we're out there. They know how potentially profitable we could be. But they also know how we can't not put dicks on everything. So I'm waiting for the day when some company gets so fucking desperate and poor that they're willing to attempt to sanitize furry for mass market. I'm really surprised it hasn't happened already. I'm really surprised it didn't happen in like 2010, 2011. That, like, you know, Hot Topic didn't come around and try to like get big furry artists to like sign deals and sell out and start selling furry stuff in Hot Topic, and then, you know, start going after porn artists to try to shut them down. I'm really surprised it didn't happen.
I mean, they do steal our content, but like one thing that I do want to say, Disney, for example, with Zootopia, does recognize that we are a demographic to sell things to. Like if you saw how they actually tried to sell Zootopia, it was through our fandom. So the capitalists are aware that we do exist. They just don't understand how they can actually make money off of it yet. 100%.
One day they will, and this is why, as a fandom, we have to collectivize, we have to democratize, we have to start institutionalizing ourselves, we have to start communally owning the space in which we celebrate our culture. We have to start, turning furry sites into public entities. We essentially have to start communally owning, in paper, in legality, our fandom before some company comes knocking to someone like Dragoneer and tries to buy it. Had IMVU figured out how to make money with FA, there wouldn't be a furry fandom right now.
That's the question, though, with larger society, though, not just furries, is that, I mean, eventually socialism has to be the answer here, because it's really the only thing that gives the working class purpose, because that doesn't happen in the long run with capitalism. It happens only in short runs when capitalism is doing well for the workers. But ultimately, that all starts crashing down. And it doesn't really take that long to do it. We have a system in the United States where we really don't go that long between not having recessions. And so it's inevitable that we're going to get one or two big recessions right next to each other. And it's highly likely that that next one is just down the road here. And if it's anything like 2008, it's going to be bad. And if it's worse than 2008, with the kind of alienation within our culture that we're seeing, it's going to be horrible. Because you think the fash is bad now, just wait until these people have nothing to lose, because they will lose it. Because once you have nothing to lose, you do lose it.
Yeah, and the socialist parties in the United States, as cool as the DSA is, as hilarious it is, they tweet furry pictures at us. Like, it is comprehensively not ready to deal with that.
And we need to make sure that we're there to support these communities, because if we're not there to support these communities, it could easily snowball in the wrong direction. Like, we have to be a force there that is visible, and we need to start building this up right now, because if it's not built up, we lose.
And you know, then it falls to the rest of the world. You know, then there's no vanguard party anymore. The USSR is gone. Most socialism is gone from China. Xi Jinping may have gotten his doctorate in Marxism, but It's still a country where workers throw themselves off of roofs because the working conditions are so bad. Elected fascists again to the parliament, again, Catalonia is declaring independence. Like, and Russia, for all intents and for all purposes, is fascist too. Like, the vanguard party is gone.
One thing I do want to say real quick about Catalonia, and I'm sorry to say I haven't really looked into it too much, but they've already started arresting dissidents. Like, just to show like how authoritarian Spain is, how willing they are to actually keep these people in a nation that they don't want to be a part of. They've started arresting political leaders who are basically getting people. They're starting to make a movement happen.
Yeah, and that's gonna backfire. Like, it's all unraveling really fast, and there's no Soviet Union to come and save us. We're it.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it is the people that, when it comes down to it, we can't expect, and we never could expect there to ever be some superpower that's just going to come in and save us, because that superpower, guess what? It has to be created by the workers.
But it was, though. The first time this happened to the world, it had already been in existence for 30 years. The Soviet Union had already been there for almost 30 years, 20 years. 1917. It was 25 years before it ever rolled a T-34 into Germany. But now This is happening, and like, we've got China and the hopes that, they can bring back Maoism and challenge the world. We've got Kim Jong-un and his country that has devolved from socialism so much because of the 60-year besiegement it's been under, that it's had to abandon socialism just to survive. This is what is left to stand up to fascism for the second time.
Is it, though? Right now, we're starting to see the movement build up. We've never, ever in America seen it like it is now, in living memory of a vast majority of the people in the United States.
No, but it was a hell of a lot bigger in America in 1917, in 1919, and 1920, in the 30s during the Depression. Right,
before McCarthyism.
It was still pretty big, bigger than it is now, with 30 years of organization and progress. In the Arizona State Museum, there's a voting machine, and you would have levers for party line voting. So you just go in, you pull the lever, and boom, all the Democrat tickets, boom, all the Republican tickets. And there's a third lever on that machine, and it says Socialist Party. And that means that, even in Arizona, the Socialist Party was organized and big enough to justify getting a label for straight ticket voting. In 1920, whenever this voting machine was in service.
Right.
But now we've got the DSA, and even though it's growing rapidly, it's still kind of fighting with the Democrats to get the liberals to wake the fuck up.
Catalonia is getting really crazy right now. There's a story out that I believe it was at the beginning of the week, that Madrid had basically declared that they were going to dissolve the local police in Catalonia, and they were going to send in their own law enforcement there to, quote unquote, keep the peace too. So they are literally under martial law. Like,
and that is even my old liberalism. Like, that's the kind of shit, the crown comes in, dissolves the local parliaments, the local assemblies, and deploys redcoats to, quote, keep the peace. Like, that enraged even my American liberalism to read that.
Okay, so could you imagine, just for a second, let's say, there is an area in South Oregon and Northern California that you're probably familiar with, that from time to time they have identified as the state of Jefferson, and they want to become the new state. Could you imagine, like, if they decided to start blockading roads like they did in the 1930s, basically just declared themselves off a new state and said, we're basically voting in ourselves, a government separate from the two states. Or they would probably disband the local National Guards in that area and then send in law enforcement from Oregon and California to dissolve the situation. This would be them doing that there.
Oh, yeah. It's expected.
Yeah. So
it
it would be expected, even in the United States. Of course, it'd be very much expected in the United States. But then let's say they decided to have a vote about it. The police come in. The new police that's been formed there by Oregon and California to keep the peace go in and start seizing the voting machines, because that's what's happening. They're basically saying, no, you're not even going to get the vote on this issue.
That's how it's been for 4 to 5 years now. Like, this is their first chance that they might be seeing a referendum, and then like the Spanish government might just take that back. Like, nope, you can't.
Yeah, this is how you start a revolution as a king. This is how you start revolutions. This is how you fuck it up. And you know what? Like, last time this happened, there wasn't an EU. This proposes a question the EU has never had to deal with before. What happens when one of our countries goes into civil war?
What happens if somebody tries to form a new country? Exactly.
Yeah, does the EU disband? Because I guarantee you, like, say Catalonia, it gets its vote, gets its independence, unless it like really wants nothing to do with Europe and wants to go, start a relationship with North Africa or something, it's going to join the EU. Like, it's going to get absorbed into the EU no matter what.
Right now, the U.S. and the general opinion, both on Catalonia and Kurdistan, is that they're basically disavowing the situation because they don't want to create so-called chaos in the region. They want stability, and by stability, they want the borders on the maps to all be the same, and they want these people to stop complaining and start consuming.
Right. So, what does the EU do?
One thing I do want to say about this is the EU definitely doesn't care about what the people want. What they care about, what they want is like a stronger economic union. That's kind of like their main goal. Of course, there's other things, because it's not just it's no longer just like an economic bloc. If say a civil war started off in Spain and it got serious and the EU felt like this was a threat, what they would do is test out their new EU army. That's what they would do, in my opinion. Right,
and the other reason that Spain is guarding the situation so closely is Catalonia is not the only nation in Spain. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's another. There's the Basque territory too, which also wants some semblance of independence. And the Basque territory also covers two nations. Not only are they in Spain, but they're also in France. So if Basque country goes, there's a good chance that could spill over into parts of southern France as well.
And southern France is where the communists are.
That's true, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, that is true. Like, this is a big situation for the EU. This is not a very simple question. And it not doing anything means it's probably too late for it to do something anyway.
Yeah, and then on top of this, at the same time, you have Kurdistan splitting off from Iraq through a referendum, and their referendum was overwhelmingly successful. You don't see...
Yeah, they've been trying for that country for 200 years, and they're going to build it brick by brick.
Brings up the big question within the international community, especially, with the United States wanting to be such a big arbiter. The United States, as far as its people goes, all seem to be about this whole like national identity thing, except when it comes to these cases where, oh no, now we got to redraw the map or whatever. Oh yeah. And of course, part of the reason behind...
Well, okay, the average American doesn't even know where Catalonia is. or where Kurdistan is. They're going to hear Stan, they're going to go Muslim, and they're going to go bad terrorist. The only reason why, the reason why it's called Syrian Democratic Forces in the American news is so they don't have to explain that these are Muslim communists.
Oh God, would you just imagine having to explain someone that is Muslim and a communist to an American?
And that we're funding them and and supporting them, like
they're getting
our big bad American military.
They're getting our tax dollars. That's the best part.
Our tax dollars. Just go up to a Trump supporter tomorrow. Did you know that your tax dollars are funding Muslim communists?
I sometimes wonder if we really are in a simulation, and sometimes there's just some kind of whatever is running a simulation is testing us. It's trying to slowly make things more and more absurd to the point where we have fucking President Trump.
The kid playing Minecraft is definitely bored now. He plugged in Gmod and he's now just basically spawning in as many hellspawn as he can.
So let's talk about China. Okay. All the leftists got excited when they saw that, like, the Chinese Economic Forum or whatever came out with a study that said if we went back to Mao, we'd be doing better. And everyone's, we're going to go back to Mao. China's going to be socialist again. And like,
they're going to burn their shovels and melt them down, and then everybody's going to starve.
No, this is leftists getting excited over this. The idea that China will go back to being really socialist.
Oh, okay. So there hasn't been any ridiculous rightists out there making jokes about it yet.
No, this is a conversation happening within leftism. And it's a really optimistic conversation, but one that I'm thinking like, okay, so this is based on something that came from China that made it to American news, that leftists saw, that leftists got excited about. What are the chances that, like, now I know socialism is different. It can make rational decisions. Like, you can look at that and go, okay, this is the best course of action. We should probably do this. But is there enough of that left? Can China actually do that? Can China become the new vanguard state? Can it start supporting and funding Catalonias and Kurdistans and southern Frances all over the world?
The Philippines, Nepal.
Yeah. Can it break away from its neoliberal addiction that the United States forced upon it and start being the vanguard state?
That's a hard question, because neoliberalism is a lot like the opium of the 21st century.
And we're just importing it into China. China is actually very influential, like in its own region inside of like East Asia. But with developing countries in like of course, like just Africa in general, like North and East Africa, they get a lot of things done. So I don't think it would be far-fetched to say 20 years or maybe even just 10 years down the line, they basically they're looking out for socialist Catalonia.
But can they do that while still being neoliberal themselves? Like, I don't see them being able to do that without kicking neoliberalism to the curb and going back to actual socialism, which would involve a huge, again, another cultural revolution inside their country, which would be a huge upheaval for a country that supplies like 90% of the United States shit.
So basically with China and the vanguard state.
Do you think it's a possibility?
Can it do it?
Can it do it? So it's really up in the air. China is kind of ripe for Maoist Revolution 2.0 right now. It's not infeasible that the government has to do this out of necessity over there, simply because if they don't, they're going to be dealing with their own revolution from the people. One of the things that's really kind of kept out of the news internationally in China is the fact that there's so much like protests and stuff like that going on in China that you don't hear about. It's kept out of the news for image purposes.
Yeah, like there's a lot of small towns outside of urban China that try to have little town-sized revolutions and start electing their own workers' councils, and then the Chinese police come in and say no with guns.
And that happens a lot there in China. It's not some sort of outcast kind of event that happens within that country. And they have a huge history of doing it because that's what happened during the Maoist revolutions as well.
So you think that Xi Jinping is going to have to bring back actual socialism, start devolving the private, government run, but also, really private crony run companies, and start going back to actual socialism?
So it's going to be a necessity that occurs, because if it doesn't occur, what's going to happen is that basically they're going to be so bogged down with protests and strikes and whatnot that it will ruin the country's economy. They won't be able to grow like they are, and they will fall into a recession. And if they have a recession, they're going to have a revolution. There's a good chance that there's going to be big change in the country in some form or another. What that is remains to be seen, but judging by this report, I think it is looking positive.
So do I take down my Soviet flag and replace it with a Chinese flag? Because I'm embarrassed to fly the Chinese flag, because it is like, oh, hey, here's this great socialist country that was completely destroyed by capitalism because it was forced to.
I still wave my socialist flag, and mine is, of course, the hammer and sickle. I don't have any problem with that. I'd say no, not right now. Maoism kind of still has a bad rap because of Mao Zedong.
Well, so does so like I fly my blank red flag normally because most people don't know what that means. But when I'm really fucking tanky pissed, I take out the Soviet flag and shove it in liberals' faces.
That's always fun to do because it's a fun trolling act, honestly.
Like I've got a Soviet flag hanging on the wall behind me, and also the victory banner. Like, you know what the victory banner is, right?
But the one with the globe with the hammer and sickle with the wreaths of wheat around it.
No, that's like the really, really early Soviet flag. No, that's the victory banner is what they rose over the Reichstag after Soviets when they took the Reichstag in Berlin. Like, you've probably seen it.
Wait, how is it different from the Soviet flag with the hammer and sickle and the star in the corner? How is that different?
It's different because it has the information of what unit was the one that did it. It has the information about.
Yeah, just for listeners, just type in victory banner. It probably should pop up for you.
The other big story, of course, that happened this week was the Colin Kaepernick thing, and actually it's been happening over the last couple weeks. And this is just an example of how things get perverted within the American dialogue with the media, and how the right wing totally took a conversation about police brutality and turned it into this whole argument about respect for the flag and, appropriateness and decorum. And of course, I'm talking about Donald Trump calling Colin Kaepernick a son of a bitch, and then calling for his firing, which also was totally illegal and an impeachable offense according to the U.S. code.
But one thing I just find so ridiculous about that whole entire predicament is the fact that Donald Trump had the audacity to say that the NFL is afraid of its players instead of the other way around. And it's like, what you're saying is people who are employed should be afraid of the company that employs them. And that's incredibly ass backwards.
That's disturbing.
That genuinely is. Like this, I mean, of course, a multimillionaire is going to be saying something like this, where people who are employed by a business should be scared of it. He obviously he doesn't want labor unions or anything like that coming back inside the United States. But I just find that disgusting.
Well, of course, and you have to think of the angle that it's coming from and the people that he's speaking to. Like, the people that he's speaking to, like, they do think like that. They hate unions, for instance. They take very anti-worker stances, even though many of them are working class themselves, so they kind of just betray themselves.
But yeah, I mean, as an American, let's just say freedom of speech. I actually forget the football player's name, because this isn't something I followed very heavily. He does have a right to protest. He has a right to do what he did. And to say that the president himself was disgusted by peaceful protests because that's what it was. It just shows how much of a hypocrite he is, and the people who do agree with him are as well.
Well, like, so the reason why he picked the NFL was because the NFL is, you know, America, and it's something that his contingent of, you know, neo-Nazi fash follows. In addition to that, the NFL, in their mind, is seen as this rightfully American thing in which, you know, the black man is pitted against each other for the entertainment of white people, and, you know, they literally say, we own these teams. So it was like the perfect thing for him to go after and rile up his fans about, because he had just suffered two huge embarrassments, right? He had suffered
The both
DACA.
sides.
Huh?
Oh, sorry, no.
Yeah, and this all was Media Circus. Make no mistake about that.
Right, and there's a very specific reason why you know he picked it, because it went to the core of his supporters' Americanism. It had a big racist aspect to it, and you know, it got the media fired up. Like, why how? Like, why do these people still let him play them like a fucking violin? Like, and liberals are still fucking astonished as to what he does and how he does it. Like, he just, in one sentence, spins an entire multi-billion-dollar industry, you know, like a whirling dervish flying around with his narrative. When liberals still don't understand how he does it or why he does it, and the news still lets him do it. Why? You know, the easier answer for the news is that, well, it makes money anyway. But why liberals still don't get how he does it and why he does it? It's like, you know, liberalism really is just this toxic ideology, because the entire core of it is to shove all personal responsibility for the benefit of and the betterment of society off of you onto another person. It creates armchair philosophers who moralize about both sides being bad while they do absolutely no activism themselves. It just creates this mud that you have to trek through to get anything done.
Right, and all the while this is going on, we have a crisis unfolding right now in Puerto Rico.
Right, like, you know, they have the TV on at my work with the news on, and, you know, 20 minutes about Puerto Rico, all fucking day about the NFL.
I work with people that live in that particular area. That's one of my markets. I speak with these people every day, and every day since Irma, not Maria, but since the first hurricane hit, and then Maria afterwards, some of these people haven't had power since Irma, and then Maria swaps in and takes out the entire island. They're saying that they may not have power in some cases for months. These people are looking for ways to cook their food, to get their medicine. The roads are still out right now.
And the government doesn't care because there's no white people living there. So there's no media drama. There's no comfy white middle-class family to show whose house got destroyed that will make people go, we have to do something, which will make the government go, oh, fuck, we have to do something.
Right, and this is basically from an American point of view. This is like a foreign country to most people. Most people don't think about this, but these people, like, they're American citizens. Like, they're entitled to the same rights as everybody else in America.
And so, like, how, when Puerto Rico comes out of this, could they possibly in their minds justify wanting to continue any relationship with this country?
God, I hope not. I really do hope that
how is there not a socialist revolution going on right now? How are they not going to Cuba and saying, annex us, please?
Because they have this relationship with the U.S., they're afraid that if they sever ties, they just won't be able to continue. That, and they're also afraid of the U.S. military because, well, everybody else, yeah, exactly. You know, you got freedom-bringing troops knocking at your door.
It's time to culturally enrich Puerto Rico. They wanted independence.
I think after this, either they deserve statehood, and they deserve their 2 senators. They get the vote, and their congressmen, everything that goes along with it, and we give them their own star on the flag and everything else, or we let them have a referendum to leave the United States. The whole idea that you're a territory is so obnoxious. Like this should be something that Americans should be offended by, that their own country has control over people and they don't get a vote, and yet they're somehow called American citizens, or they don't get the vote in the same capacity and have the same kind of representation.
I mean,
we don't even let our capital have that, so...
And of course, this whole thing was sparked, with the whole Kaepernick thing by all of the police brutality and stuff like that. And the fact that the people that are being targeted by it are minorities or people with disabilities. Those are the 2 people that are being just outright, by the numbers, being unfairly targeted and killed by police. It's just like, the other day I posted to my Twitter and Caster saw it. This kid that had autism basically just get
manhandled by the police.
Right.
Brutalized.
Right. They basically tackled him, pinned him down, and his friends saw it and started trying to comfort him and everything. And oh my God, if I when I was watching the video, I was like, oh, she's going to get arrested too there. I was actually surprised she didn't. Because of how some of those stories have ended up.
How is it that when you see that, you end up with a crowd of astonished liberals going, how is this happening? This is America, with their camera phones, and no one just fucking grabs the cop and decks them, drags them out behind some dumpsters, and helps the person that the cop just fucking attacked for no reason get away. How does it not happen?
I would like to see that just one time, just one time, because that's all it's going to take is for people to start standing up.
Well, the problem is that like sometimes people do try that, and basically how the police have basically reacted to stuff like that is with a lot more intensity. Like if you do any sort of resistance to the police, if you so much as brush against a police officer, they will try everything they can and try and basically pin you for something. Well, like, people don't jump in because they're afraid of the police.
Yeah, but if you have 1 police officer or 2 or even 3 police officers and you got 20 people watching, I think 20 people could take out.
Liberals who are astonished that this is happening. Like, it's not something that happened because it's side of their bubble that they see on the real and whatever.
Right. This kind of reminds me of like this like old anime that I'd watched. There's Rurouni Kenshin. Have you guys seen this? It's a historical like Japanese drama.
Growing up, that was my absolute favorite.
Do you remember in the beginning part of Rurouni Kenshin where the police, I think it's the first episode actually, had said that so the police in the first episode of Rurouni Kenshin basically tried to execute people, and
yeah, I remember that.
Right, and everybody like surrounded them. So the police were just like, okay, so we're just gonna kill all of you.
Yeah, I remember that.
I mean, so is this what it's going to get like in the United States? I mean, are we just gonna have like a big showdown one day where we do see some people like start beating up on cops, and the cops are just gonna like pull out their guns and just start shooting people?
Yeah, and that's gonna be the beginning of it. The big it. Like, that is gonna be the beginning of people going into the streets and shutting down cities, and that's what's gonna start things spiraling into a situation that could look something like a civil war. Though this country is so big, the Civil War 2.0 I don't think could ever really happen. I just think that this country has so much territory that if all of that started happening at once, that it would just become unmanageable. You get like semi-autonomous regions. California already, for some reason, can unconstitutionally just decide not to go with government programs. They're supposed to, but just because they carry such a big fucking stick, they could declare independence at any time and not suffer any consequence.
If there was a big split, there would definitely be. I could see there being unification of the West Coast, and just geographically, like they're separated from the mountains from the most of the rest of the nation, so that in itself could very easily commit.
Yes, California, roll tanks over Phoenix. I'll help.
I'm not sure about over in the east though. It's kind of
okay.
Like you've got the coast.
See, this is why I didn't want to say the word civil war, because it turns into like the usual leftist revolutionary, masturbating, and like it's such an unfucking known. Because the last time it happened, like the West was a couple of shacks, and there's so much, there's so many still like bubbled liberals out there who would just start armchairing, and both sides are bad, both sides go away. I am the arbiter of social morality. Both sides are bad.
But
you know what's going to happen to those people if there was a civil war? These liberals would get dragged out by fascists. The fascists would say, put on a fucking uniform or you're going to get a bullet to the head.
Yeah, and then we'll go, we told you so.
Right, yeah.
And then they'll nitpick about our methods. Like, liberals are happy with what Antifa has done. Like, the fascists aren't in the streets. They're not organized. We made them go away. But they're going to armchair about the way that we did it. And they're going to insist that, no, actually, it was my Medium article that saved us from fascism.
Well, we still have to be vigilant because they are constantly evolving. And,
yes,
of course, we did see over the past week, Anticom.
Ew.
They're regrouping. Now they've gone from anti-fascist to just wholesale ripping us off. So now they're no longer not Nazis; they are anti-communists.
So is this like? What are the chances that this carries itself out all under the purview, outside of the view of mainstream liberal America? That communists and fascists are just going to carry on like this shadow gang war across the United States. And the liberals are going to continue to watch The Real and Stephen Colbert and get excited when Stephen Colbert owns Trump and rant or whatever. And like, there's no political consequence. But like underneath, there's this shadow war of like watchdogs of like leftists running around with phones and like exploding streetlights to stop fascists.
Well, what's going to eventually happen is that people they will eventually fall into certain groups and everything. They may not subscribe fully to the cause of the left or the cause of the right, but they will join ancillary causes that will benefit one group or another, and so one group or another is going to shift the Overton window. How far that window shifts, we don't know. Like you'd said, maybe in 5 years, Antifa has served its purpose, and there's Antifa shit all in Hot Topic. The Overton window has moved largely to the left, but we're not necessarily even a social democracy, but we're something more tolerable than we are now. The fact is we just don't know.
There is one big thing with liberalism in itself, where it's been infected with the kind of idea of ultimate tolerance, to the point where they believe that, oh, well, we let gays have their place in society, why not Nazis? And that sort of thing just kind of begins to break down, because they don't really have the realization that, like, the moment you start to tolerate that which is intolerable, it essentially starts to break down whatever you're trying to strive for. Like when you endorse something, or not endorse, but when you basically say something should be allowed to exist, that in itself is designed to reduce liberty, it's kind of compromising.
Liberals just need to understand that you defending people who would ultimately take away your rights to free speech is kind of it's kind of it's a folly on your part. You don't allow people to take your rights away. As simple as that.
Because once you start tolerating when people...
Fascism tricks people into voting them away. That's the insidious thing about it. It gets people to trade their rights for an identity of being white.
Or just an identity, because really, at the core of fascism, it doesn't necessarily have to be racist. Really what it is it is the whole idea of corporatism, and there's a strong racist part of it. But that part of it that's a secondary thing. But really, it could be anything. That's just the most obvious thing to make it, because when you look around, it's something that you immediately see. Whereas if it were something like a fandom or something like that, or some sort of idea, it's more nebulous.
True. Like, racism is an obvious thing. It's very easy to make obviously the sun rotates around the earth argument. It's just common sense. You don't have to look any farther than your window to see that black people are different and, on the whole, not exactly where you are in society. Maybe you're better than them. Like, it's really easy to make that pitch about it.
It's entirely based on confirmation bias, more or less.
Right, and it's an easy one to make because it is visible. But you see fascism arise in other societies to a lesser extent, like in Chile, where there isn't really much of a racial divide in the country, so they used other divisions within the country to get it done. And of course, you also see the same kind of thing happening like in the Balkans, where instead of it being the division being, race necessarily, it's like an ethnicity. So it's a language people speak, and if it's not an ethnicity, it's whether or not they're Christian or Muslim.
So it's just a division that has to exist somewhere, because the United States has been a racist empire since the very beginning. It's the most obvious thing to do here.
Right, so it's the most obvious thing to do here because of our history.
Like, for something like fascism in itself to rise, it needs to center itself around some kind of division in society. It needs to find something. It needs to find some narrative to try and justify itself, and it's come out in many ways.
And like the first people who jumped, it's sad, because the first people who jumped on the whole "he will not divide us" thing that's a liberal Trump, love Trump's hate sign, right? But then they turn right around and fucking say, Antifa's evil and worse than Trump because they're violent. You just fucking divided us, asshole.
But as far as the whole Anticom thing goes, it was kind of funny that it came out and then it basically dissolved the second it came out. So I don't know if you guys saw this. Rally got canceled. So
Another one that was going to be in Charlotte, not Charlottesville, but Charlotte,
North Carolina. Yeah. So they canceled it. They're saying they're going to be changing the venue. So we need to watch for that. That's something that we do need to be paying attention to. My guess is they'll probably cancel it a few times, maybe move the date around. What they're wanting to do is they're wanting it to kind of be a surprise, but they want you to know that they exist. This is a marketing ploy. So they're wanting people to get on board with this whole idea. They're using this idea that they're being threatened with violence and stuff like that, when I didn't see anybody come out and say that they were going to kick their ass or anything like that. I didn't see any we'll be there too kind of things involving this. Now, it could just be that I wasn't looking for it, or maybe I'm just not following the right people on Twitter. But I didn't really see any of that.
Well, I mean, if you're following tankies on Twitter and they're not saying stuff like "we're going to be there too," then I don't think anyone's saying it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was saying it. And like I said, I could be wrong. And I'm sure that there is going to be some listeners out there that if I am wrong, they will let me know and tweet at me at Kitsune Flame right there in the lower third and let me know. And screenshot that stuff. Should prove me wrong. I don't care.
Did you know that a T-34 is only about $16,000? Like it's as cheap as some like 2-year-old used car. It's affordable. Like you pool your money, you could get a couple T-34s for your DSA chapter.
So, I mean, are you saying that we should just roll up at Anticom in T-34s? Because, like, this totally goes against everything that I just said. And now they're going to take that whole thing out of context.
Thing, though,
Because they take everything seriously, and that's where they always get tripped up. They always take everything seriously. And then you just say, oh, wow, you thought I was being, you're dumb.
Here's the thing, though. Like, you could still, like, you might have to get some kind of special license or something, but you could still, like, get a tank. You might not be allowed to load it with any sort of ammunition. Probably won't even have a
no, you're supposed to fill the barrel with cement if you do that.
Yeah, like, you could still take it there for, like, just publicity or something like that. That'd be amazing. Like, have something like that and put banners all over it. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see that.
Can we have Majira drive the tank?
Yes. Can we make the furry tanky meme real? Put Madeira and the hyena and like just stick them all in the tank, roll it around with a big, communist furry flag with the feepaw on it and wave it at the Nazis. And like blast out the back, I'm a single furry, I'm a single furry. We'll draw our personas all over it and put like, a whoa and a woos all over it.
Hello?
Put hello.
Notice
big on the side. Deo was here.
Actually, it would be Deo is watching.
Yeah. Well, yes. Okay. So it'd be better. Deo is watching would be better because it's the actual furry thing. But like Deo is here would work as well because it's the whole Kilroy thing. But I mean, either or.
I'm still waiting to see that in the wild. Like, just, like, be out somewhere and, like, see, like walk into, like, a bathroom and see, like, a Deo is here tag.
Deo is watching.
Although, maybe not in the bathroom if it's Deo is watching. No.
See, I've been thinking of printing them and then making wheat paste and putting it up around town.
I would love that. That's pretty awesome.
Should actually go serious punk and like actually spray paint it somewhere. That would make her day. Oh, it's her birthday today. Shoot, that would be the coolest birthday present. Is for her to actually see that actually graffitied somewhere.
Oh snap! You know what? Birthday shout out to Deo.
Yeah, happy birthday, Deo. We're gonna graffiti you somewhere.
But yeah, as far as the whole Anticom thing is, definitely watch it. As far as your comment about whether or not it devolves into street gangs, I think not. I don't think it's gonna be like that. I do think it can be the predication of something much more serious if we're not careful. And so we need to make sure that when we're combating this, we're doing it in an effective manner. And I don't think necessarily combating them out in the streets is going to be super effective in this. I think
we need to give 10% of our time to fighting the Nazis and 90% of our time to our neighborhoods. The challenge with giving 90% of our time to neighborhoods is figuring out how do you talk about leftist ideas without using leftist language? How do you talk about the working class and exploitation of wage labor without saying the word proletariat?
You say working class.
About collectivizing your neighborhood's economy without using the word communism, because people are so indoctrinated against it. But when you can figure out how to say it without saying any of the words they're indoctrinated against, people like jump right on board.
People like the ideas, they don't like the language. And so, yeah, you're right. Sometimes you do need to use different language with people. Honestly, I'm pretty straight up with people in terms of my language. That's just how I am, and I'm kind of blunt about it, and I don't really care. And I'm like, well, that's very interesting that you see it like this. And then I do ask them. I was like, well, what if I frame it like this? I mean, what do you think about this? Because really, and I'll straight up tell them, I'm like, look, the only difference between this that you like is the language. And then a lot of times, like, people will see, oh yeah, that makes sense. Maybe I'm not as crazy as what they would assume. But I typically take things in a very blunt manner, and of course you've seen this on Twitter. I'm not like I am in real life on Twitter. That's a caricature of me.
Oh yeah, anyone who hasn't figured out that the Mao Zedong fox with the freaking header image of the furries in the tank and fucking Marxist Lemimist is a character not to be taken 100% seriously.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
An alt furry.
Yeah, exactly. The alt furries, of course, they will think what they think, and that's just how they are. But that's how things are.
Humor. It's weird because Nazis broke down the resistance to Nazism with ironic humor. And it's interesting that I see the DSA doing the same thing with humor, but it's not ironic humor. It's not, oh, look, this hammer and sickle is so ironic. Ha, ha, ha. It's like, here's a...
posting...
not Antifa furries.
Oh, yeah, the hentai with the Antifa furries.
Yeah, like it's humorous. It accomplishes the same thing without being ironic, and I find it really interesting that that's the direction that's being gone in.
I find it funny that like they've been courting furries now, which is really interesting. We really had the spotlight, you guys.
Like I always knew there would be a point where furries would become politically important. And everyone called me crazy, and yet here's the DSA tweeting furry memes.
Attica, we're one step closer to actually having a furry state. Don't worry, it's going to be soon.
Yeah, it's going to happen. We're going to have the furry socialist world confederacy.
That is actually called Seattle.
So Seattle exists. It's furry, but it's a bunch of tech furries. And there isn't really anything socialist about it. Like, they don't really share... Like, I'd love to move there and be like, hey, wouldn't it be great if you all collectivized your income? And they'd be like, what? No. I couldn't buy dildos or something capitalism. Something socialism doesn't work. Something,
And then, of course, there becomes a time when, oh, wait, we're going to have to start collectivizing our income because otherwise we're not going to be able to live. I mean,
yeah.
As a single...
So that is my whole point. That is the whole point of my furry political thesis, is that as the economy gets more and more desperate and people get poorer and poorer and the divide between wealthy and poor gets wider and wider, furries are naturally going to start falling back on other furries. But already, like in furry history, how many times have you seen a furry get in trouble, put out a journal asking for help, get tons of emotional support, but like very little material support? I got a ton of material support when my scooter was stolen, but I still had to pay half of it out of pocket. And that was like after spamming it like crazy and having a support network of people who were like, oh, you're fighting with us here. Yeah, there's totally a reason to help you because we're working to the same cause of, getting rid of these all furries. The best thing that we can do is build an infrastructure that will handle that will be able to conduct and organize and distribute those resources that are collectivized evenly and equitably and in a way that actually is going to help people. And the more I talk about it, the more people seem to have different ideas. I think we should start with democratizing the conventions, turning them into essentially workers' councils and using them to start acquiring the necessities of life for other furries. Like housing, vehicles, et cetera. And then I met with you're being anti-intersectionalist and, you're even being nationalist because it's only applying to furries. And it's like, okay, the subculture of like 400,000 people across the world is a hell of a lot easier to deal with than 7 billion people. I don't want like some supreme furry state to rise. It's just this is my community. People are the people that I know the best. These are the people that I understand the best, and it's a small enough group to work with, yet big enough to be effective.
Yeah, and that doesn't preclude that there could be other groups at the same time that do this, or even groups working intersectionally with each other, achieving these same goals.
Exactly. Like, if this is successful, it provides a roadmap for other communities to do this and not have to wait for Lenin and his vanguard party to overthrow capitalism before it's given a shot.
Right. And so that does actually, out of, the dimness that we see in the world today, I mean, I think that kind of vision does provide a little bit of hope. And I would hope that other people are at least like maybe inspired to do something similar as well.
It's getting a lot of traction. I've discovered the idea has been thought before among other leftist furries. And I've discovered a lot of interest, a lot of like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're crazy. And then, no, wait, hear me out. Tweet thread. Oh, wow, that actually has a lot of thought put into it, and I can totally see the reason for it. It usually like drops there, but I've only been tweeting about these ideas and talk about these ideas for like a week. So you keep talking, and then I won't be the only one talking. Then we have to see, will there be a reaction from the furry bourgeoisie if it exists? Will conventions pretty easily be open to the idea of, oh, okay, we'll democratize and we'll, start taking on responsibilities beyond just planning 3-day parties in hotels and start becoming something else? Or is there going to be like this like for apocalypse pushback where they just start banning everyone who like doesn't like the theme?
So there was one last thing that I wanted to address before we go for tonight, because it is getting very late here on the East Coast and the show's running a little bit long. And that is, we made a promise to our audience. We were going to read a certain book. Obviously, as you guys can tell, it didn't get fully done. I got about halfway through it. I'm a busy guy, okay? I have work. Attica
you also never gave it to the rest of us or told us where to find it. So I just sort of like,
oh my God.
You to give me this book to read. And then, here comes the day before the podcast. Hey, remember that book that we were supposed to read? Was I supposed to like go and get this from Barnes and Noble or something? And you're like, here's the link.
Oh yeah, no, I just kind of assumed that everybody was just going to find it and download it. So that's on my B, and I apologize about that. So I will totally take ownership of that. And that is definitely going in the show, by the way, Attica. So you get show notes for calling me out.
I have successfully critiqued the communists and not ended up in the gulag. Look at me. I've done it. See, liberals, it can be done.
So yes, we will more than likely be tackling that either this week or rather next week or thereafter. We want to make sure that when we do this, we do it right. So we will be pretty soon tackling Communism and Terrorism by Trotsky pretty soon, because we definitely want to put it to bed, especially with this whole Anticom thing coming up. We need to make sure that we are not endorsing actions of people who may try stuff. It may seem on the surface or in the instant attractive to give them praise, but in the long run will actually hurt us.
Right. Like when that one guy, I forget his name even, went to that Republican baseball game and tried to shoot the Republican congressman. My first response was, thank God someone finally tried to fucking shoot some of these people as they're trying to vote to kill us all. And I was public about it, and I banked on that people were so fed up with their lives being voted on that those statements wouldn't be so controversial. And I think it was right, because alt-furry tried to run with those and basically got like no traction, and people were kind of like, yeah, they're voting to kill us, just fucking, they deserve it. But like in the long run, shooting them didn't accomplish anything. I mean,
no, it didn't.
Maybe it was in the back of McCain's head that I'll get a brick through my window if I vote for this, but I highly doubt that's why he both times now has not voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And like 98% of the rest of the Republicans in the Senate did, regardless of the guy shooting them at a baseball game. So it doesn't accomplish anything, because it's not a collective action. Like people taking to the streets to blockade intersections to cut off the police from their state house. It's a community collective action of people saying no more. No more violence from police. No more shooting my black son. No more voting to take away all of our health care and kill us. It's not one person like blowing a building up. That is the people saying no. There is a huge inherent difference, and that is what leftism is based upon. So terrorism doesn't really have a point,
right? Because it's individualist in its nature.
Right. It's about one person going out. What in his mind may think he's accomplished something and fixing something. And, maybe, there were some times where it may have been effective. Like, had that Valkyrie suitcase bomb gone off and actually killed Hitler, the world probably would have been changed. Almost on the whole, it's a completely useless thing to do. And that suitcase bomb wasn't even done by leftists for the left. It was done because it was very obvious that Hitler was going to lose the war and ruin Germany.
So I think with that, we are going to be saying goodnight tonight. I guess I'll see you guys. We like to say next week, but usually it's every other week. So I'm thinking week after next, probably. Although if it's busy in the news, we may be talking next week. I don't know what's going to be happening.
If Catalonia has a full-blown civil war between now and then, it depends.
Yeah, so with the world in chaos here, we bid you guys all good night and good luck.